I'd like to introduce my friend Joe and Ali, and they will go through it with you. So thank you. Thanks, mate.
All right. So, look, I'm very mindful of the fact that we're the last two and we're standing in the way of the band, so we'll try and be as quick as possible. So before we jump in and talk about the app or the concept of the app, I really wanted to share with you, I guess, the journey and why I guess we're starting with, or saying the app is probably the best place for us to start. So it would have been 4 or 5 months ago, sitting at work, I had a call from someone and it was, hey, look, I've got this guy that I really want you to meet. It's a man who reached out to a man who reached out to a man who reached out to me, right? You think about the whole concept of prop, right? So I thought, sure, no problem. So here I was in a coffee shop. I met my good friend here, Rob. And Rob started talking to me about, he's very passionate about the whole suicide, and he was kind enough to share with me his story. And there was a couple of things that I will never forget that just absolutely rang home with me. The first one is that it is the highest killer of people under the age of 34. Put your hand up if you're under the age of 34. Think about this. Not cancer, not heart disease, it's suicide. It's crazy. And yet we don't know about it. Until I met Rob, I had absolutely no idea. It is to me, it's crazy that this is going on, and we seem to know absolutely nothing at all about it. The other thing that really rang home for me is that men outnumber women 3 to 1 when it comes to suicide. Absolutely crazy. So I met with Rob, and it's fair to say I walked away from that initial conversation with Rob. I was pumped. I was going to go and change the world. I walked away and I grabbed Ali and I'm like, mate, get Lifeline on the phone. So we've been dealing with Lifeline for 4 or 5 years. We've got a long relationship with them through Telstra. I'm like, get them on the phone, get me in there. I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to change the world. This is going to be sensational. So we caught up with Lifeline and met with my good friend John Staines, who's here tonight. And I sat down with John and I said, we're going to do this. And he looked at me as if to say, you idiot. It's not quite that simple, right? There's a number of, not only do we have things like cost, we need investment, we need resourcing, we need people, there's legislation stuff that gets in the way. It's actually not as easy as you would think to save a life, the amount of things Lifeline has to go through. So John kind of calmed me down and put me back in my place and said, you know what, great idea, just settle down a little bit, let's work on something. So we got together, we got the two teams together, and we had a bit of a workshop. We had 2 or 3 workshops, actually. And we started to talk about where we think we could get our best bang for buck. Where could we make a difference on the front line? And still in the back of my head is that under 34s. Single greatest killer for under 34s. So based on that, I guess we kind of decided that probably the best way to go is let's look at how do those younger generation people like to engage. It's not via the telephone. It's via text message, social media, and those type of things. So out of that, we kind of decided that the best place to start is through an app. So we've been working with the guys at Lifeline for the last 2 or 3 months to put together, at this stage, it's a concept of an app that we want to put out there. Now, Ali's going to run through, I guess, the app at the moment and a bit more detail around why an app, and then we'll sort of go through, after that we'll talk a little bit more about, what are the next steps from there. So I'll hand over to Ali.
Yeah, sweet. Thank you so much. Thanks, Rob, and thank you everyone for coming along tonight. Just quickly, did most people get a text message a short while ago? If you didn't, I blame your terrible handwriting. And the stereotypes are true. I think the females had much more legible stuff. So hopefully, if you didn't, you can certainly approach me and I'll certainly get you onto that list. But I'll start by asking you a question. How many people in this room have a Facebook account? Just put your hand up if you do. That's basically most people in this room. A really interesting statistic is 12 years ago, Facebook didn't exist. Only 12 years ago. WhatsApp, Instagram, Snapchat, you name it, they just didn't exist. And I'm not sure. I've already sent 3 Snapchats tonight. Has anyone sort of beat me today, or not really? Not yet. So the way we communicate is completely changing, And interestingly, 40% of Australians between the ages of 18 and 29 have a Snapchat account. So the way we communicate with our friends, the way we communicate with each other is completely changing, which is where the idea of an application is born from. As Joe discussed, we're looking at developing this app. It's still in the beta phase. There's still a lot of development to go, a lot of work with Lifeline, a lot of work with the developers that will help us get there. But today we just wanted to put a concept in your hands and hopefully start getting your feedback and start getting some momentum to help drive this into completion. We know that when someone is to contact Lifeline, if they were to do it through an application, the data would be far richer, right? With an application on your phone, you can track things like location, where they're contacting you from. And if a help seeker is contacting you from a specific location, you can certainly connect them with a counsellor that's local and quite possibly provide better counselling services. If you connect that up with your Facebook account, which most people in this room have, you can get really rich demographic information, age, favourite sports teams. Potentially with that demographic information, we could do things like connecting a young help seeker with a young counsellor or a more mature help seeker with a more mature counsellor, really providing far richer counselling services. We could potentially connect an Indigenous Australian, if we can use that data analytics, with an Indigenous counsellor. Ultimately, hopefully driving and helping to save more lives. And that's what the ambition is through this app creation. So we've still got a long way to go, but we're starting that journey tonight, and hopefully by putting that into your hand with your assistance and hopefully with some donations in the future, we can build that momentum and build this app that will hopefully ultimately tackle those really scary statistics that Joe touched on. So thank you. Joe.
So I guess as Ali's just spoken, so we've come up with the concept of an app, and we're launching it tonight. But I guess through the discussions we had with Lifeline and me being more the type of person I am, it was like, what else can we do? If we launch an app has to be just the starting point. Ali touched on things like, we can then look at data analytics and stuff like that. So what we've kind of done over the last 4 or 5 months is put together almost a roadmap in conjunction with Lifeline. And now the key to this entire roadmap is absolutely this app, getting this app launched out there in the market. And to do that, we need 2 things. We need funding, but we also need people. One thing that with the whole prop philosophy that's kind of stuck out with me is through this whole process, every single time we found a hurdle or a roadblock, what do? We reached out to someone. We reached out to another person. Just keep reaching out until we find the person that'll do exactly what we need them to do. So we've gone through this whole... So we launched the app. We then look at things like, as we said, data analytics. We can do trend analysis. We can start to identify, with location-based services, we can start to identify known suicide hotspots. Imagine if one of your relatives is on the app and that, you get an instant message to say, hey, Joe's at a bridge that we know is a known hotspot. He's been talking to a counsellor. We can start to put things and processes in place to help actually save that life. There's things like we can look at quality assurance programs through this, through prop. We can raise funds to do things like help better train counsellors. We can use things like bot technology that can start to analyse data live and make real-time decisions to help assist counsellors. Right? We can reduce the number of counsellors needed to take calls. There's a whole raft of things that we can do once we get this app off the ground. The app is absolutely fundamentally the key to launching this whole thing, right? So I encourage you all to, get on board with the whole prop process, because prop's what's actually going to help us drive the whole uptake of the app and, working with Lifeline. So again, all it's going to take is that key message, people reaching out to people. I think Rob mentioned it before, play it forward, right? So my one thing I'd like to leave you with tonight is make sure that, we don't just leave here and go, that was great, felt good. Talk to people. Start getting the message out there, because momentum will absolutely build. Now, before I hand over to Rob, I just want to leave you with one, thought. For me, since the day I met Rob, I've kind of looked at this as, in all honesty, this is the single greatest opportunity I've ever been presented with in my entire life. What do I mean by that? Imagine in 12 months' time, we're all standing here. I'm a little bit balder, a little bit fatter, but we're all standing here. And I'm talking to you about how over the last 12 months, we've launched an app, we've raised some funds, and we've created some awareness. You're all going to sit there and go, you're not that good. But imagine standing next to me on the stage as a man, right? And in the crowd is that man's wife and kid. And that man stands up here and looks at every single one of you in the eye and says, thank you. Thank you for being part of something that saved my life. That's the opportunity. That's what we're all here for. And I encourage you all to absolutely get on board with this and make it happen. I'll now hand over to Rob.